Imagine losing everything in a single day. Your wealth gone, your livelihood destroyed, and then the worst news a parent could ever hear: all your children dead. Now imagine sitting in the ashes of your ruined life, your body covered in painful sores, while the people closest to you say you deserve it. They tell you God is punishing you, that you must have done something terrible. Even your own wife tells you to curse God and die. Would your faith survive? Could you still trust God when everything you believed about Him seems like a lie? One man faced this impossible test, a man so righteous that God Himself called him blameless, yet he lost everything. This is the story of Job. A story about suffering that makes no sense, faith that refuses to die, and a God whose ways are higher than we can imagine. This story will challenge everything you think you know about why bad things happen to good people. Long ago, in the land of Uz, there lived a man named Job. He wasn't just any ordinary man. Job was known far and wide as the most righteous person of his time. He feared God deeply and always turned away from evil. Job was blessed beyond measure. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters who loved each other dearly. His wealth was extraordinary. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. He had many servants who helped manage his vast estate. People respected Job not just for his riches, but for his character and his devotion to God. Every day, Job would rise early in the morning and offer sacrifices to God on behalf of his children. He worried that perhaps they might have sinned or cursed God in their hearts during their celebrations together. This was the kind of father Job was, always thinking of others, always seeking to do what was right. But something was happening that Job couldn't see. In the heavenly realm, God was having a conversation with His angels. Among them was Satan, the adversary, who had been roaming throughout the earth. God asked Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and turns away from evil." Satan sneered at this praise. "Does Job fear God for nothing?" he challenged. "You've blessed everything he does. His flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." God responded with confidence in Job's faithfulness. "Very well," God said. "Everything he has is in your power, but you must not lay a hand on Job himself." And so the test began. One peaceful day, while Job's children were feasting at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came running to Job with terrible news. "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby," the messenger gasped, "when raiders attacked. They carried off the animals and killed all the servants. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." Before Job could even process this tragedy, another messenger arrived, his face pale with shock. "Fire fell from the sky," he cried. "It burned up all the sheep and the servants caring for them. Only I survived to bring you this news." Job's heart was pounding now, but there was no time to grieve. A third messenger stumbled in, out of breath and covered in dust. "3 bands of raiders came and swept away all your camels," he reported. "They killed the servants who were with them. I alone escaped." Job was reeling from these losses, trying to comprehend how everything could vanish so quickly. Then came the worst news of all. A fourth messenger arrived, and Job could see the horror in his eyes even before he spoke. "Your sons and daughters were feasting at their oldest brother's house," the man said, his voice breaking. "Suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they're all gone. Every one of them. I'm the only one who survived." In a single day, Job had lost everything: his wealth, his livelihood, and most devastating of all 10 of his children. Job stood up slowly. He tore his robe in grief, as was the custom. He shaved his head in mourning. Then he did something remarkable. He fell to the ground and worshipped God. Through his tears, Job said, "I came into this world with nothing, and I will leave with nothing. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Even in his deepest pain, Job did not sin or blame God. But Satan wasn't finished. He appeared before God again among the angels. God asked him, "Have you considered my servant Job? Even after losing everything, he still maintains his integrity and continues to fear me." Satan replied, "Skin for skin. A man will give up everything for his own life. But stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." God permitted Satan to afflict Job's body, but he could not take Job's life. Soon after, painful sores broke out all over Job's body, from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. The pain was unbearable. Job sat among the ashes, scraping his sores with a piece of broken pottery, trying to find even a moment's relief. His wife, watching him suffer, couldn't bear it anymore. "Are you still holding on to your integrity?" she asked bitterly. "Just curse God and die." But Job looked at her with sad eyes and said, "You're talking like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good from God and never trouble?" Even in his physical agony, Job refused to sin with his words. Word of Job's suffering spread, and 3 of his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, came to comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they barely recognized him. His appearance had changed so drastically from his illness. They wept aloud, tore their robes, and sat with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights without saying a word, because they saw how great his suffering was. Finally, Job broke the silence. In his anguish, he cursed the day he was born. "Why didn't I die at birth? Why was I even brought into this world to suffer like this?" His friends, who had come to comfort him, now turned into accusers. What would they say? And would Job's faith survive what was coming next?
Eliphaz, the eldest and most respected of the 3 friends, was the first to break the silence. He leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of years and wisdom, or so he thought. "Job, my friend," Eliphaz began, choosing his words carefully. "Think about what I'm saying. Have you ever seen an innocent person perish? Have you ever witnessed the upright being destroyed? No. Those who plow evil and sow trouble, they're the ones who reap it. God doesn't punish the righteous. You must have done something terribly wrong to deserve this. Job's heart sank. These words cut deeper than any physical pain. His own friend was accusing him of hidden sins. Job's voice trembled as he responded. If only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. My words have been rash because God's arrows have pierced my spirit. Even a dying man has the right to cry out. But you, my friends, have become like a dry stream bed. You promised water, but delivered nothing. I came to you for comfort, and instead you've become my accusers. But Eliphaz wasn't finished. He pressed harder in his second speech. He suggested that Job's wickedness must be great, that perhaps he had oppressed the poor or refused to help widows. Each accusation was like salt in Job's wounds. Then Bildad spoke up, his tone matter-of-fact and merciless. Job, if your children died, they must have sinned against God, and he handed them over to the punishment they deserved. Can you imagine? Job had lost all 10 of his children, and his friend was saying they got what they deserved. The cruelty of those words was almost unbearable. Bildad continued, If you would just seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you were pure and upright, surely He would rouse Himself for you and restore your prosperous state. Job's grief turned into frustration. How can a mere mortal be righteous before God? He cried out. If I summoned Him and He answered, I don't believe He would listen to me. He crushes me with a storm and multiplies my wounds for no reason. Even if I'm innocent, my own mouth would condemn me. Though I'm blameless, I despise my own life. He wasn't cursing God, but he was being brutally honest about his pain. Then came Zophar, the harshest of the three. His words dripped with self-righteousness. Job, your endless talk must be answered. Should your babbling reduce us to silence? You claim to be pure in God's sight, but I wish God would speak and tell you the secrets of wisdom. Know this, God is punishing you less than your guilt deserves. If you put away the sin in your hand and allow no evil in your tent, then you could lift your face without shame. Job felt the weight of betrayal crushing down on him. These men who called themselves friends had become his tormentors. You are miserable comforters, all of you, Job shot back. Will your long-winded speeches never end? If you were in my place and I were in yours, I could make fine speeches against you too and shake my head at you. But my mouth would encourage you. Comfort from my lips would bring you relief. That's what real friends do. The debate dragged on, growing more intense with each round. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar repeated their belief. The wicked suffer, the righteous prosper. Therefore, Job must be wicked. It was neat, logical, and it was crushing an innocent man. Job defended himself with increasing desperation. My friends scorn me, Job said, but my eyes pour out tears to God. I long to plead with God as one pleads for a friend. My spirit is broken. My days are cut short. The grave awaits me. Surely mockers surround me. My eyes must dwell on their hostility. And then, in one breathtaking moment, Job lifted his voice in faith. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. After my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. The three friends continued their attacks, but Job held his ground. After many rounds, they finally fell silent. They could not break Job. But someone else had been listening to every word.
A young man named Elihu had been standing at a respectful distance throughout the entire debate. He was much younger than the others, and according to the customs of that time, he had waited patiently, allowing the elders to speak first. He had expected them, with their age and experience, to have the right answers. But as Elihu listened, something began to burn inside him. He was angry at Job for justifying himself rather than God, for speaking as though he were more righteous than his Creator. But he was equally angry at Job's three friends. They had condemned Job without offering any real answers, and in doing so, they had made God look unjust. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, Elihu spoke. "I am young in years, and you are old," he began carefully. "That is why I was fearful, afraid to tell you what I know. I thought age should speak, advanced years should teach wisdom. But it is the Spirit within a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives understanding. It is not only the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right." Elihu turned directly to Job. "You have said in my hearing, I am pure, without sin. I am clean and free from guilt. But I tell you, Job, you are not right in saying this. God is greater than any human being. Why do you complain to him that he responds to no one's words? God does speak, sometimes one way, sometimes another, though no one perceives it. He speaks in dreams and visions of the night to turn people from wrongdoing and keep them from pride." Unlike the three friends, Elihu did not accuse Job of secret sins. Instead, he reminded him of something deeper. God is sovereign, and he owes no one an explanation. Suffering, Elihu said, can be a form of correction, a refining fire, a mercy meant to rescue a person from greater destruction. God is mighty, Elihu declared, but despises no one. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives the afflicted their rights. Elihu's words continued, preparing the way for something far greater than human wisdom. He spoke of God's justice, his power, his majesty. He reminded them all that God's ways are beyond human understanding. "The Almighty is beyond our reach and exalted in power," Elihu declared. "In his justice and great righteousness he does not oppress. Therefore, people revere him, for does he not have regard for all the wise in heart?" As Elihu finished speaking, the atmosphere began to change. The air felt different, heavier. Something was about to happen, something that would change everything.
In that moment, the moment that would change everything, the wind began to blow. But this was no ordinary wind. Dark clouds gathered with supernatural speed, swirling and churning above Job and his friends. The air crackled with power. Lightning split the sky. Thunder rolled across the heavens like the voice of eternity itself. And out of that whirlwind, out of that storm of divine presence, God himself spoke. Job, sitting in the ashes of his broken life, looked up. His friends fell silent. Their confident arguments died on their lips. The voice that spoke was the voice that called the universe into existence, the voice that separated light from darkness, the voice that set the boundaries of the seas, the voice that breathed life into the very first human being. "Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Prepare yourself like a man, Job. I have some questions for you, and you will answer me."
what followed was breathtaking. God didn't explain why Job had suffered. He didn't justify his actions. He didn't apologize. Instead, he took Job on a journey through creation itself. "Where were you, Job, when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have such great understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you must know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy?" God's questions painted pictures Job had never imagined. Have you ever given orders to the morning? Have you shown the dawn its place so it might grip the edges of the earth and shake the wicked out of it? Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea? Have you walked in the depths of the ocean? Have the gates of death been shown to you? With every question, Job became smaller and God became greater. Not in a way that crushed Job, but in a way that reminded him of the infinite distance between the Creator and the created. Can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth? God spoke of rain and lightning, of ice and snow, of the wild donkey roaming free in the wasteland, of the wild ox that refuses to serve humans, of the ostrich that flaps its wings joyfully yet leaves its eggs on the ground, of the horse that laughs at fear and charges into battle with magnificent strength. Does the hawk take flight by your wisdom and spread its wings towards the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? Then God turned his attention to the most fearsome creatures of all, the behemoth with its powerful limbs and a tail like a cedar tree, and the Leviathan, the creature of the deep that no one dares disturb. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Through every word, every image, every question, God was showing Job something profound. The universe is far more complex, far more mysterious, far more wonderful than any human mind can grasp. And if Job couldn't understand or control the natural world, how could he possibly understand the purposes of its creator? Finally, Job found his voice. It trembled with emotion as he spoke. "I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more." But God wasn't finished. He continued revealing his power, his majesty, his care for even the smallest details of creation. And when he finally concluded, Job was completely undone. With tears streaming down his face, Job spoke again, and this time his words came from the deepest part of his soul. "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. You asked, 'Who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge?' Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." Job's voice broke with emotion. "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." It wasn't that Job was wrong to be honest about his pain or to cry out to God. God wasn't angry with Job for his anguish. But Job now understood that he had been demanding answers as if he were God's equal, as if the creator of the universe owed him an explanation. In his suffering, Job had lost sight of who God was. Now, in God's presence, everything became clear again. Then God turned his attention to Job's 3 friends, and his voice was filled with anger. "I am furious with you, Eliphaz, and with your 2 friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has." These men who had been so certain, so confident in their theology, so quick to judge, they had been wrong. They had reduced God to a formula, made him small and predictable. Job, in his raw honesty and his refusal to accept easy answers, had honored God more than they had with all their religious speeches. God commanded them to offer sacrifices and have Job, the man they had accused and condemned, pray for them. And Job, despite everything they had put him through, graciously agreed. He prayed for the friends who had wounded him with their words. And then, in a moment of breathtaking grace, everything changed.
God began to restore Job's fortunes. It started slowly, quietly. Then it grew like a flood of blessing. God didn't just give Job back what he had lost, he doubled it all. 14,000 sheep instead of 7,000, 6,000 camels instead of 3,000, 1,000 yoke of oxen instead of 500, 1,000 donkeys instead of 500. But the restoration was more than material. Family members Job hadn't seen during his suffering suddenly returned. Friends who had stayed away came back. They gathered around him, comforting him for all the troubles the Lord had brought upon him. Each one brought him a piece of silver and a gold ring, not just rebuilding his wealth, but restoring his dignity and his place in the community. Then came the most precious gift of all. God gave Job 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. These children could never replace the 10 he had lost. No parent forgets a child who has died. That grief would always be part of Job's story. But God gave him something just as holy, a new beginning, a new family to love and cherish. His daughters were known throughout the entire land for their beauty. Their names were Jemimah, meaning dove, Keziah, meaning cinnamon, and Karen Hapuk, meaning beautiful. And in an act radical for that time, God gave his daughters an inheritance alongside their brothers. He honored them. He valued them. He treated them as equals. Job lived 140 more years after his restoration. Can you imagine? 140 years of life after suffering like that. He watched his children grow. He held his grandchildren. He played with his great-grandchildren. 4 generations, all existing because he stayed faithful in the darkest valley. When Job finally died, he was old and full of years. His life had known devastating loss and incredible restoration. He had questioned God and been answered by God. He had lost everything and received everything back, multiplied. But more than anything else, Job had encountered God himself. He had heard his voice. He had glimpsed his glory. He learned that faith isn't about understanding everything. It's about trusting the one who does. Job's story ended not with explanations, but with restoration. Not with answers to every why, but with the presence of the one who is the answer. Not with the erasure of suffering, but with proof that suffering is not the end of the story. And as Job closed his eyes for the last time, surrounded by generations of family who existed because he held on to faith when everything else was stripped away, he understood something profound. God had been trustworthy all along.
Job's story teaches us several powerful truths. 1. Suffering doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes the most faithful people go through the deepest valleys. Job's story shatters the myth that good people only experience good things.
Pain and loss can touch anyone, regardless of how righteous they are. 2. We may never fully understand why we suffer, but we can still trust God. God never explained to Job why he had to endure such agony. Sometimes we won't get the answers we desperately want, but we can trust that God is wise and good even when life doesn't make sense. 3. True faith isn't about rewards, it's about relationship. Job didn't serve God because of his blessings. When everything was stripped away, his faith remained. Real faith says, even if he doesn't rescue me, I will still trust him. 4. God is bigger than our understanding. We don't need to have all the answers. We need to have faith in the one who does. God's wisdom is higher than the heavens, and his ways are beyond our comprehension. That's not frustrating, that's comforting. It means we can rest in his sovereignty. 5. Even in our darkest moments, we can be honest with God. Job cried out, questioned, and expressed his raw pain, and God didn't condemn him for it. God wants our authenticity, not our pretense. You can bring your doubts, your anger, your confusion to him. He's big enough to handle it all. 6. Restoration is possible, even after devastating loss. Job's story didn't end in ashes. God restored him in ways he never imagined. Your current chapter of pain is not your final chapter. God is still writing your story. Job never received the answers he wanted, but he received something greater, the presence of God. Maybe you've been in a season like that, a season where everything fell apart and God felt silent. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Please share your story in the comments, not because you have it all figured out, but because someone else might desperately need to hear that faith can survive even this. Thank you so much for watching. If this story encouraged you or taught you something new about faith, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring Bible stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear Job's message of faith and perseverance today. See you in the next story.